A very good morning and many thanks for joining us on yet another edition of Political Spectrum. We're live on Spectrum Television. I am Raymond Eater, putting you through with the day's biggest political news, stories and events. As we of course venture into the month of May, in that order, we can of course say a very happy new month to all of our teaming viewers from across the country and the West Coast of Africa. Thanks for joining us this morning. It's May Day. It's Workers' Day across the country and across the world as well. Nigerian workers, that is, in solidarity with workers across the world to observe the International Workers' Day celebration today. We know, of course, that efforts have been made across the leadership of the respective unions across the country, who of course have Nigerian workers' welfare as top priority. It's left to be seen if the government of the day will do right by ensuring that promises made to improve the lots of Nigerian workers actually see the light of the day. But let's turn our horoscope to more political intriguing effect of the 10th Assembly come June. While of course 28 days away from today, we're expecting a change of the baton as far as the leadership of the country is concerned, where President Buhari is expected to hand over to President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But it's been more than 2 months since the APC, and this is where we start off latest roundup of the day's political news, stories and events. And we begin with the news that the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, has advised the opposition to stop the endless complaints, as he put it, over the 2023 presidential election, which he said they lost woefully. In Abuja yesterday, the minister argued that President Buhari's analysis on the reasons why the opposition lost at the elections were incontrovertible. While Mohammed noted that the president actually deserved accolades for delivering what he termed the best election, what they are. Well, he said President Buhari had lived up to its billing by delivering a free, fair and credible election, and his legacy is assured, saying the president would rather lose his state and many of his party's strongholds than tamper with the fidelity of the election. And this is why he actually provided a leveled playing field for all the parties. Now, the minister observed that the opposition's overconfidence going into the election stemmed in part from the blockers and a section of the international media into uncritically reporting that they were coasting home to victory when they were indeed heading into the ravine of defeat. Well, as you would expect, reactions have trailed the comments made by Mr. Lai Mohammed, which equally comes on the back of President Buhari's analysis last week about the state of the elections and why the opposition lost. To this, the Labour Party and the People's Democratic Party (PDP) have both berated the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, for his comments that the opposition lost the 2023 presidential election and that President Buhari deserved accolades for organizing the polls. Or the Labour Party Acting National Publicity Secretary, Obiora Ifo, yesterday lambasted the minister over what the opposition described as a heart-wrenching comments, still progressing with what he termed warped, illogical and incongruous concepts. Now, in a statement made available to newsmen yesterday, the Labour Party described the recently concluded presidential poll as massively rigged and saying that anything short of constantly prescribing doses of expired and ineffectual propaganda to Nigerians. Now, they say it's ill-fated and hugely failed trip to the United Kingdom and the United States, where he attempted to redeem the grossly battered democratic credentials of the present administration, spending millions of taxpayers' money to defend an indefensible action, is what they said another tragedy of the Buhari 8 years leadership. And they've said it's only blind that they will continue to insist that the 2023 presidential election, which was, according to them, massively rigged, that the opposition lost the election and that Buhari deserved accolades. Well, the party described Lai Mohammed's comments that the presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, won the February 25 election as shown from the actual votes cast at the polling units across the country. Well, the PDP, in a statement by its spokesman, Debo Ologunagba, invited Nigerians to note that Lai Mohammed's comment is coming after President Buhari made similar sub judice comment, as they put it, in his widely condemned attempt to justify the rigging of the President. The All Progressives Congress APC, Sahilu Lukman, has reacted to calls for his expulsion from the ruling party. Well, a lot of reports have been making the rounds about the calls for the expulsion of Mr. Lukman from the rank and file of the leading All Progressive. Expulsion of Lukman. Well, El Mazouk made the call following Lukman's decision to drag the national chairman of the party, Abdullahi Adamu, as well as the national secretary, Iyola Mishore, to court. Now, recall that Lukman had filed a suit at the Federal High Court in Abuja through his counsel, Mohammed Abdullahi, over Adamu's failure to convene a meeting of the National Executive Committee of the party, as mandated by its constitution. But Lukman had given Adamu a 7-day ultimatum to convene a NEC meeting where he would provide a financial account of the party. But El Mazouk, however, in his letter dated April 28, 2023, said Lukman should be expelled for taking legal action against the party, arguing that the matter is strictly an internal affair. National Working Committee meeting of the party. Well, the APC vice chairman, in a chat with newsmen, promised to react at the appropriate time. Let's turn our sights now to Adamawa State, where Hudu Yunusa Ari, the suspended resident electoral commissioner for Adamawa State, has finally broken his silence on the controversial declaration of Aishatu Dahiru Binani of the All Progressives Congress APC as the winner of the governorship elections in the state. Well, Ari was suspended by Now, INEC later declared Amadu Fintiri the incumbent governor and the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, as the authentic winner of the election after following due process. Now, Ari, in a recent letter to the Inspector General of Police, claims that he acted within the ambit of the law. Well, he stated that the results to be announced by the INEC coalition officer had differed from the copies he signed and uploaded on the result viewing IREF portal. Well, he also alleged that attempts were made to replace him with his secretary and accused 2 national commissioners of meeting with Governor Amadu Umaru Fintiri at the government house in Yola during the supplementary election. Now, according to the report he filed, it was based on this that he had compiled all of the polling unit results, that he had the breakdown of the valid votes that were scored by the 2 leading candidates in the supplementary election using the results from the polling unit, as according to him were collated into all relevant forms EC8B, C and D and E respectively, by properly and legally appointing and recognizing coalition officers as well as himself as the Adamawa State's Chief Coalition Officer and the resident electoral commissioner in the state. But meanwhile, INEC has denied claims of any of its officials meeting with Governor Fintiri during the supplementary election. Well, don't forget that INEC had previously asked to inspect the winner of the governorship election. Interesting times ahead indeed, but it's good to know that Mr. Yunusa Hari has finally broken the silence on this development, which is coming after he was declared to be, gone awol following the permission granted to the Inspector General of Police by President Buhari to investigate the happenings around the supplementary election of Adamawa State. The allegations he himself has brought forward is pretty huge, but some have argued that perhaps it doesn't hold water, because he claims that he had gone ahead to announce the result because what the coalition or the returning officer had with him was not a reflection of the very result he signed and uploaded to the... It looks like Mr. Yunusa's letter to the IGP is more or less compounded his was as far as investigation into this matter is concerned. We'll let that to the security operatives to determine. We'll bring you up to speed with this report as they do come in. Let's move on now to monetary matters, where the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has said there is no plan to halt the distribution of new naira notes from circulation. Well, the acting director of the corporate communications of the bank, Dr. Isa Abdulmamin, said that the rumors that the regulator was contemplating the withdrawal of the recently redesigned 1,000 naira, 500 and 200 naira banknotes from circulation, some interest could cause panic among the members of the public. While he further reiterated that the new and the old currency notes have been circulating side by side, just as the bank has been taking delivery of a good quantity of the redesigned banknotes from the Nigeria Security Printing and Minting Company. And furthermore, the CBN said it is committed to supplying the approved indents for the smooth running of the nation's economy, and they therefore urge the members of the public to disregard any reports suggesting a phase-out of the redesigned currency. And for the avoidance of doubts, they have said that the redesigned and old notes will continue to be accepted as legal tender, and they will circulate side by side for transactions ahead of the December 31, 2023 deadline, when the old 1,500 and 200 naira notes will eventually be phased out. Well, the question here is, how feasible are all of the promises made by the CBN in this regard? A lot of persons have been asking the questions, where are the new naira notes? I mean, the entire naira redesign policy and the crisis it occasioned in the nation's economy, the hardship felt by Nigerians in that period, have led to the policy formulators in the first place. And so much so that getting close to the half of the year, we're still having more of the old notes in circulation as opposed to the new ones. So, where complying with the Supreme Court's ruling that allowed both notes to run concurrently until the end of the year, the incoming President Bola Tinubu has severally said that when he comes into office, it would scrap the naira redesign policy. Well, what we do not know is whether or not it would want to toe on that part. And if that is the case, wouldn't it amount to a squandering of the nation's resources to print more of the new notes in the expectation that it would become the only legal tender as of the end of this year? Interesting times indeed ahead. Led factions have traded words over a planned National Executive Committee meeting in Bauchi State. Well, the Apapa faction had earlier invited the presidential candidate of the party, Peter Obi, and other leaders of the party to a convention taking place in Bauchi. But in a swift reaction, the Abure faction, in a statement issued by the acting publicity secretary, Obiora, said the suspended Labour Party National Vice Chairman, Lamidi Apapa's faction, was planning an illegal, fake and unauthorized NEC. Well, they said it had come to the notice of the leadership of the party about a proposed illegal, fake and unauthorized National Executive Council meeting organized by the suspended Deputy National Chairman, Lamidi Apapa, and those they described as his renegade cohort, which we're told is expected to take attended by virtually all the NEC members, including the 36 state chairmen and the secretaries, and of course all of the members of the National Working Committee, most of the elected members of the National Assembly, the leader and the presidential candidate of the party, Mr. Peter Obi, as well as the party trustees, including the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, among others, took part in that meeting in Asaba. And in a memo that was signed by the former Deputy National Chairman Apapa, they extended the invitation to some of the elected leaders as well. So it begs the question, which of the factions Mr. Peter Obi would want to actually work for, because as we know it, they did not support or get their support during the campaignings for the election, nor recognize them as leaders of the party. And they've said these are people they are, working to terminate their cases in several tribunals, and have also concluded that the temerity goes to show that following his attendance of the NEC meeting in Delta State, that Mr. Peter Obi is probably still backing the Julius Abure leadership of the Labour Party in the country. So it's left to be seen what the court's pronouncements that barred Abure and several other leaders of the party from parading themselves as national chairman would do for the party and its chances going forward by the Labour Party, which eventually produced 4 governorship candidates. It's a crisis they're still trying to, of course, mitigate so it doesn't hamper the party's chances of success at the polls. We're talking about post-election concerns. There were elections, of course, into the 109 seats of the National Assembly's upper chamber, that's the Senate. It will be by June. And while there are plans to inaugurate and formally induct them into the National Assembly later this month, the formal inauguration into the 10th Assembly will come in June, barely a few weeks after the incoming administration must have gotten its foot up and running in the nation's capital, Abuja. Well, a lot of lobbying is taking place as to who will become the fit. When we come back from this short break, we're exploring the possibilities of who is likely to emerge as the nation's number 3 and 4 citizen. Stay with us when we come back. Political Spectrum will continue. Products and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Good morning, Nigeria. Year after year, they have informed, educated, and entertained us. When you needed information, knowledge, or an escape.
From generation to generation, the Nigerian broadcasting industry has worked tirelessly to serve you.
And now, this service will finally be recognized.
Come May 17th this year, broadcasters all over Nigeria will gather at the Hotel and Suites for the maiden edition of the Nigerian Broadcasting Awards, an award ceremony set to reward hard work and excellence in the broadcast media. Voting starts on 20th April and ends on Hill 7. It's time we say thank you. This award is organized by the Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria, BON.
The Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord.
I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon. Staying on, you're watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. I am Raymond Ita. Let's delve into the day's big concern, because just as we're prepping up for the handover of the power baton from President Buhari to Bola Tinubu in 28 days' time. There's also expectations that the next legislative seat or the next arm of government as regards the 10th Assembly will equally see not just inauguration of the new members elect, but its principal officers who would guide the affairs of the Assembly. The CNPP has warned that attempts by interested parties who are loyal to the ruling All Progressives Congress APC to ensure the inauguration of what they describe and fear would be a rubber-stamped legislature will be very dangerous for the survival of Nigeria's democracy. Now, the group is sometimes good, except that when it's against the interest of the masses, it becomes a problem in itself. Well, this was pretty much disclosed by the Secretary General of the CNPP, Willie Ezugu, in a statement issued yesterday. Now, the umbrella body of all the registered political parties, as well as political associations in the country, have noted, and yes, what part of the statement had to say. The handwriting can be seen. According to the CNPP, the essential elements of democracy, like the principles of the separation of power as well as oversight, will further be jeopardized if what they term the selfish and undemocratic clandestine moves towards fostering a rubber-stamped National Assembly as an arm of government actually is allowed to succeed. And this has been the primary reason, according to them, for the failure of the All Progressives Congress APC to keep to its campaign promises, particularly resulting in the federal government's willful failure to meet the primary duty of government, which is telling one Nigerians about the plots to install a rubber-stamped legislature. Then it means everyone really has to take this into consideration. But this is just a coalition of political parties in the country, most of whom do have members on both floors of the National Assembly. But what is the body language or the the psyche of the members elect in question with regards to what they want to do? Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to their respective votes to determine who the principal their respective biddings or wishes. So in terms of who we think is likely to emerge as Senate President or the Speaker of the House of Representatives, some members elect of the National Assembly, if not all, have agreed that the majority party in the National Assembly should be allowed to take that decision on which areas they wanted to zone the Senate presidency to, and then allow the rest of the members of the parliament to determine for themselves whom they want to direct the affairs of the legislature. But the issue of where it should be zoned to should be the exclusive of the leading party in the country. And they've also said, as far as the minor roles in parliament is concerned, the minority roles, that is, which should be held by the opposition parties, that should also be the exclusive of the leading opposition parties in the country without any form of influence from the ruling party. You would say that kind of arrangement would easily stick and would be welcomed by all parties interested. But doesn't it portend the possibility of installing a government that is, rather a legislature that does the bidding of the government at every single turn without consideration to how the people feel about these issues? Well, we're focusing keenly on the upper chamber of the national elites in the country recently, and the tensions in the lead up to who will get the coveted seat are really stoked up when Bola Tinubu, president-elect, returned to the country sometime last week. Interestingly, he has kept mum on this issue, stopping shy of making public comments about this role. Understandably, because he doesn't want to be seen as influencing the process, which would mean that you have one arm of government trying to, have an overbearing influence on another arm of government, whereas the rule of law allows for separation of powers and each arm operating independently of the other. The processes of who emerges as Senate President, so it doesn't look like his agenda is clearly to have someone who will do his bidding at every turn. But behind the scenes, it appears that this is the position, because severally, there's been a lot of gimmicks being pushed around that Mr. Tinubu himself is yet to come to terms with who he wants to support to become Senate President, considering a lot of persons have been hovering around him, especially the principal targets and those interested in that role, and will attempt to, have a critique of the men who are in the race for the position of Senate President. Senator Orji Uzor Kalu, who has been one of the first to throw his heart into the ring. As a matter of fact, he even took a clue from the presidential ambition declaration of President-elect Bola Tinubu, who had said that it was a country. Well, he hails from a region that has arguably produced more Senate presidents than every other region in the country, so much so that all the 5 states that make up Southeast Nigeria have differently had turns at the nation's number 3 job. So, Orji Uzor Kalu throwing his heart into the ring again certainly springs surprises. But as promised, we're going to look critically at each of the men who have said they are interested in leading the legislature in the country. And so let's look at Orji Uzor Kalu and his pedigree. This is a man who's currently representing Abia North in the Senate and as one of the frontliners in the race for the 10th Senate presidency. As I said, currently the 9th chief whip of the 9th Senate, and of course began his legislative career back in 1992 when he was first elected, by the way, into the House of Representatives, services would tell. We of course know that his stint at the House of Reps was short-lived after a military coup took place. And he enrolled, of course, in the University of Maiduguri, where he studied political science, and having secured a second term with a bid of about 30,805 votes, of course, got re-elected to the Senate and has immediately began the process of emerging as Senate President. Well, he was the first senator to actually declare to journalists that he was in the race for the Senate presidency, and had asked the party glaring, and he has actually also met with Mr. President in this regard, President Buhari, to also inform him of his intention to run for the Senate president. Well, according to report, he does enjoy support from some of his colleagues and other stakeholders, including the likes of Senator Chris Adigije, while some of his kinsmen and others have said he lacks the capacity to become Senate president. So opinion is clearly divided because he's a Christian from the Southeast, and he also enjoys widespread support from his colleagues, including those in the opposition parties, the PDP. And he's also said to be a close friend of Senator Ahmed Lawan, the current Senate president, and also set to enjoy a very close relationship with the president-elect Bola Tinubu. But there are concerns that his protracted case with the EFCC may be a major odd against him, as the APC may prefer aspirants without such baggage. And it would be interesting to see if they go ahead with the likes of Senator Godswill Akpabio, Dave Umahi, the governor of Ebonyi State, as well as Patrick Ndubweze. All of them thrown their hearts into the ring and will perhaps touch on their respective profiles as we go on, so we have an understanding of the men who are interested in calling the shots as far as legislative decisions in Nigeria is concerned. Let's turn our sights now to Jibrin Barau, no stranger to the political scene here in the country. He represents Kano North Senatorial District and is the only sweeping slate of the major National Assembly positions in Kano State, owing to the influence of former Kano State Governor and the presidential candidate of the NNPP, Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso, who, of course, finished fourth in the presidential post, but was able to secure 18 members in the House of Representatives alone. That speaks volume. And in the Senate, were able to garner a couple of seats as well to show that they truly are just one. Barrel managed to survive the scare of the NNPP, having polled 234,652 votes to defeat Abdullahi Baffa of the NNPP, who finished second. And that means he has now been re-elected into the Senate for a third time in a row. So, does Jibrin Barau on the premise of the number of years he now has to be at the National Assembly, specialist man, and has several businesses in Kano, and is no doubt one of the ranking senators who have declared for the seat of the Senate President. His legislative voyage to represent the Terano Federal Constituency, and he joined the Senate in 2015 and has retained the seat since then. So clearly, experience in the National Assembly is not bereft of them, and based on his financial acumen, he continually chaired the committee on the preparation, both of the Green and the Red chambers. And while away from the Parliament, Burrell served as Commissioner for Science and Technology in Kano State, and he was appointed in 2001 to serve as a member of a committee that was set up by former President Olusegun Obasanjo to review Nigeria's budgetary process. He was also, like Orji Kalu, one of the early lawmakers to declare their intentions to contest, and he emphasized his experience, and competence during his consultations as reasons why he should be trusted with the job. Well, since he declared his interest to run for the position, he has somehow received a huge amount of support from a number of northern stakeholders, and is also set to be an ally of the current Senate President, Senator Ahmed Lawan, and one of the favorites of the president-elect as well. I've been enjoyed a good relationship with him. However, he has received a backlash from the National Vice Chairman of the APC, Saliu Lukman, who is also from Kano State, interestingly, for joining the race. Now, Lukman has consistently maintained and called on the party to zone the speakership position to the northwest, while the Senate presidency should go to the south-south or the southeast. So on this premise, it looks like Burrell's major problem here will be the zoning formula to another region, and that's the south. And not just the south and the southeast have come into contention, and on the lips of many, if the zoning formula is respected, will it favor Senator Jibrin Burrell? Well, time will definitely tell on this. Let's move from Burrell now and talk about another interested participant in the race for the Senate presidency, also of a northern extraction, and is one of the landlords, if you like, in the National Assembly. And that's because he was first elected into Parliament back in 2003 as a member of the House of Representatives on the platform of the then All Nigeria People's Party, ANPP. And he also represented the Chibok Damba Gwoza Federal Constituency and was re-elected back in April 2007. Well, in 2011, Senator Arlene Dume's stay in the Green Chambers was ended as he crossed over to the Red Chamber, where he won the senatorial, defected with the faction of the PDP that broke out from the party then, led by then Senate President Bukola Saraki, known as the New PDP, and they were part of the emergence of the new APC in 2014 that also triumphed against the PDP in the 2015 presidential election. Well, with his support for the Saraki camp, which later triumphed against the party's wishes, Ndume was able to clinch the position of the Senate leader, but it was removed in early 2017 under some controversial circumstances. Well, clearly he's a man without contributed vast experience, and he has declared his interest to join the race for the Senate presidency with a so-called 10-point agenda. Although he is from the same state as the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima, and Ndume has argued that people should be treated individually based on their capacity and competence and not based on their tribe or their religion. So what would it make? Well, you have the Vice President of the country and the Senate President of the country, both coming from one state. Well, political gladiators and onlookers have said this would be the biggest bane to Ndume's ambition to become Senate President from one stalk. So he is campaigning for this to be pushed aside, but it's left to be seen if the political gladiators, the power elites within the rank and file of the APC themselves would want to consider taking such a drastic steps, knowing the reverberation of reactions it would generate from across the country. But let's move away from Senator Goswill Akpabio is a man who is equally no stranger to politics here in the country. He's a former governor of Akwa Ibom State, having served as a two-term governor between 2007 and 2015. Before that, he served in the capacity of Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs. He's also no first-timer to legislative responsibilities in the country, having become a senator between 2015 and 2019, so much so that he rose to the position of Senate Minority Leader on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. Well, he eventually defected from the PDP to the ruling All Progressives Congress in the lead-up to the 2019 election, a move many say was largely responsible for his failure to return for a second term in a row on the Red Chamber. Chris Ekpeyong, well, as a man who's not prone to giving up as far as running for political offices is concerned, he's had several stints in the Federal Executive Council, serving as Minister under President Muhammadu Buhari in the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, a position he resigned from to contest for the APC presidential seat in the APC primaries back in May last year. Well, he eventually did step down for now President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu in favor of having another shot at the Red Chambers, Ikodekwene Senatorial District, or Akwa Ibom Northwest, if you like. Well, he has immediately thrown his heart into the ring in what appears to be a kind of a lifelong ambition for Senator Godswill Akpabio. He's been viewed in some quarters as one of the frontliners and the leading candidates for the race for the Senate presidency. He's also set to enjoy a close relationship with President-elect Bola Tinubu, whom he met shortly after the President-elect returned from Europe following a 1-month leave from the country. Well, it's left to be seen whether or not Senator Akpabio's chances are equally fancied by the hierarchy in the party, following pressure by some pressure groups that the role of the Senate President should be zoned to the South-South, because the South-South is yet to, have a shot at the role of the Senate President, as opposed to the Southeast, who have producing Senate presidents. The South-South is yet to do so, and it looks like even across party lines, there appears to be, undivided support for the ambition of Senator Godswill Akpabio to emerge as the Senate President. It's left to be seen how far he can take his game to in terms of convincing the hierarchy of the APC, the leadership of the party, as well as convincing representatives of opposing, being a former two-term governor, also having a stint as a senator and a Senate minority leader, serving in the Federal Executive Cabinet of President Buhari. Perhaps he does possess the needed experience to champion the nation's number 3 role as the Senate President, but that it would ride on an easy crest to that position if the APC just cedes the position of the Senate President to the South-South, because looking at the crop of those who have indicated interest to contest, it's looking pretty likely that from this region, Senator Godswill Akpabio is the one man who possesses the requisite experience and resume to take up that role. But it's not hooray just yet. We'll see how far as it goes as far as the lobbying for this position is concerned. There's several other names that have also cropped up. We'll look at the Ebonyi State Governor. Like Senator Godswill Akpabio, he equally indicated interest to run for the president, but turned down for President-elect Bola Tinubu to return to take up the party's ticket for the senatorial seat in his region. Well, not just him, other names have also cropped up as far as the race for the Senate presidency is concerned. We're asking, who does the cap fit? When we come back from this break, the beckons, we bring you up to speed with the other gladiators who have thrown their hearts into the ring. All of that and more to come. When we come back from this break, Political Spectrum will continue. Just stay with us.
Nigerian police force, which is the only one allowed by gross level. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
Examination. My Lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters.
Adversary proceeding.
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord. I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. for Legally Speaking.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421, and on...
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail the African story.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on StarTimes to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Welcome back and many thanks for staying on. You're watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. Don't forget, you can always connect with us on StarTimes DTH Channel 421. And for live feeds, just head to our YouTube channel where we encourage you to subscribe and follow up us for more live feeds and any other thing that you may have missed out in the course of our content. Heart into the ring as whom they hope, of course, to emerge as the principal officers of the 10th National Assembly, where members-elect are expected to be inducted later this month in an exercise that would be, carried out. President-elect Bola Tinubu will himself, in 28 days' time, be taking over power from President Buhari on May 29. So is the race heated up for the leadership of the Senate and the House of Representatives were key figures who have thrown their art into the ring. Just before we went to that break, we mirrored the resumes of former Abia State Governor and current Chief Whip of the Senate, Orji Uzor Kalu, former House of Reps member and former minority leaders, respectively, Alin Dume and Senator Godswill Akpabio, while Boy State, the current governor, and Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara West is the current senator. Well, we know that the players are lined up again and others are still nursing their defeat at the just concluded polls, but surely lawmakers who won and will be part of the 10th Assembly are clearly campaigning to be presiding and principal officers. Well, it's important to factor in the role that President-elect Bola Tinubu is likely to play in all of this, as well as the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima, though we factored him into this argument a short while ago when we talked about Alin Dume, who also hails from Borno State, like the Vice President-elect, and whether or not that hasn't put paid to his chances of emerging as the Senate President when you have the Vice President of the country also hail from the same state. Well, interestingly, the former Lagos State Governor and now President-elect Bola Tinubu is yet to have a say publicly in who he wants to emerge as the Senate President of the country. We know the positions of the principal roles in the National Assembly clearly rest on the party. It's pretty sure that the President-elect himself will have a say on those who are likely to emerge. Well, this has further come to the fore as the aspirations for the Senate presidency and the speakership positions have been gathering momentum, with so many persons parading his houses and premises, trying to lobby him, as well as most of his confidants. Well, meanwhile, there are many who are of the view that while the Bukola Saraki-led 8th Senate somewhat witnessed a frosty relationship between the executive arm of government as well as the legislature. And we say this with reference to the fact that the Saraki-led Senate had to deal with two different presidents. First, Goodluck Jonathan's administration and the first term of President Buhari's government. And so it appeared that we saw robust engagement between the two legislature. And some have contended that the Lawan's leadership of the Senate has also contributed to Nigeria's huge debt stock. Because as it seems, the National Assembly currently just approves most of President Buhari's requests for loans. But some have also said from the current body language of Mr. Tinubu, he might be disposed to having an inclusive and who has, of course, inadvertently become king following his success at the post. So would he want to stop at not influencing the manner or the process that leads to the emergence of who will become Senate President? Well, his role cannot be pushed out from this. So is his Vice President-elect, Senator Kashim Shettima, former governor of Borno State, and also former senator representing Borno Central. He was a member, of course, of the National Assembly until Tinubu selected him as his running mate in 2022. Well, his choice was greeted by a lot of criticism over the Muslim ticket. However, as we know, the party did win the election. And before he became in who the party decides to pick to support for the Senate leadership. So we cannot push out the role that these two will likely, have in all of this. But let's move away from them and talk about more of the other persons who have thrown their heart into the ring as far as the position for Senate presidency is concerned. Let's look at Senator Abdullahi Adamu, who is currently the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress APC, and having served as the governor of Nasarawa for 2 terms, he moved to the Senate like many other former governors. 1979 to 1983, as we know, as the Second Republic. Well, he has joined the APC and, of course, became national chairman after the party's last convention. Just like Shettima, he was a part of the 9th Senate before actually leaving that role to serve as the party's chairman, and it's pretty good chairman of the party. So with his vintage position, he clearly will have a role in the zoning formula that the party would have to come up with, because at the end of the day, it looks like it's only zoning that will address the impasse that may be occasioned by a possible division of the rank and file of the APC on who is likely to emerge as the leading principal officers of the National Assembly. Because yes, the fix now, if the Senate presidency is zoned to the south, automatically the speakership position would go to the north, or vice versa, should the north get the Senate presidency. We do not know that yet. The APC did issue a statement to dismiss claims in some quarters that it has already zoned the position of the Senate presidency. Well, they say no such thing has happened, except that we know to different regions that perhaps serves their respective interests. So we've had persons say, for the sake of fairness and equity, let it go to the south. And some have even microed it to the south-south, who haven't had a shot on the roll before. While those from the southeast say, for the sake of fairness and having been eschewed from, holding the exalted position of president, let's have it, of course, by the likes of Ojus Okalu and Dave Umahi, both of southeast extraction, who have said, giving the Igbos zoning the Senate presidency to the southeast would be some kind of compensation for the Igbos for missing out on the presidency. And some have said they had the opportunity to have supported the emergence of an fine foul or trying to use the Senate presidency role as some sort of compensation on missing out on the presidency. It's clearly a take that will not hold water, but this is just some of the gimmicks and the antics that have been deployed by the political elites to get what they want. Anyway, dwelling with the interest from different, it seems more like Mr. President is pretty keen to, go back to his hometown of Daura to commence his early retirement from politics altogether, because basically we've seen a shift in policy implementation in the last few days of his administration versus as approved by President Buhari himself. And this is because they've said they want that to be the exclusive of the incumbent administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So we know the census will only take place after Tinubu must have been sworn in. For now, we do not have tentative date as to when that would happen, but talk about a shift in policy, that's just one of them. Another thing, we in Federal Executive Council meeting, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, said there would be an expanded committee to review the plans to remove subsidizing the premium motor spirit, otherwise known as petrol. As they've said, no exact date has been given, except that administration must have gone, and they've said that committee would include representatives of the incumbent administration. So that's a decision to be taken by the Tinubu administration. So politically speaking, and especially for a matter that concerns more or less in-house issues, you would say it would not be out of place that the Buhari government would. But at the end of the day, it behooves on all of the members of the National Assembly themselves to determine who they want to emerge. Yes, names could come up even before the first votes have been cast by the members-elect themselves. But you could be in for a dramatic run if by the end of the day, those that you thought had been lobbied cast their vote as to who they want to become Senate President. But the lobbyings and the possible zonings will only fine-tune what direction the votes will actually be cast. So if, for instance, we know that the APC would likely zone the Senate presidency to the south, then we could expect a photo finish between candidates from the southeast and the south-south who have thrown their hearts into the ring. If they go as far as micro-zoning it to one particular region in the country, in the south, then it could equally lead to interesting races ahead. Because let's say that the APC or Izuguzu, who we are told is the favorites of the Progressive Governors Forum. How true this report is, we do not know. But those are the speculations coming out from some quarters. And also, Governor Devamai of Ebonyi State. But if it comes to the South-South region, there are some names, in the burner. But arguably, Senator Godswill Akpabio is the one name that has sprung up from the South-South region and may not really experience, tremendous opposition to his wish to become the nation's #3 citizen. So interesting times ahead as far as this issue is concerned, and as usual, we'll do our bit to monitor any developing story as far as this issue is concerned. But we know this is clearly a decision. It's likely to kickstart from May 13 and would likely run until around May 17. Now, this induction is to, allow the new members-elect of both chambers of the Assembly to be, put through the basics of National Assembly premises, their offices as well, and also put through the procedures of what it takes to be a federal legislator, while the formal inauguration will take place in June. So while the induction is the preparations for the induction is ongoing, it's clearly the time now to take a decision on where the National Assembly leadership way in all of this, especially in the face of the statement issued by the coalition of united political parties who have said the 10th Assembly must not be a rubber-stamped one, and have said everyone needs to be on alert. Go for today's edition of the program. Keep a date with us. We'll be right back on your screens tomorrow as much as we can. Blind on the Cam will be up next with the latest from the world of business. Join him on Business 360. But from me, Raymond Ita, the rest of the crew, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.